Welcome back, guys. I trust you've been staying safe. Special welcome to 2024, and I hope it's treating you well so far. I appreciate all your support in 2023, and I did my best to bring you awesome content, but trust you me, in 2024, it's gonna be a hell of a ride. And I hope you can stick along, buckle up, and ride with me. This is my first video for 2024, and I hope you push it out there because it has a lot of life lessons, especially for the young couples coming up. This true crime story is coming from Uganda, another African country, specifically from its capital town called Kampala. It starts with a barber, B-A-R-B-E-R, by name Arnold. Arnold is a 27-year-old barber in Kampala, and his dad is also a barber, so no surprise in there. His dad is a barber, and by virtue of the work Arnold does as a barber, he has been tagged as Arnold Barber. And coincidentally, I don't think it's a coincidence actually, because it also ends up that his dad is called Brian, and by virtue of his dad also being a barber, his dad is called Brian Barber. So it looks like the profession is following the first name. So the same thing plays out for Arnold here. Now, Arnold is 27 years old, and he is also a social media influencer, especially on TikTok. And by virtue of what he does, he promotes it on TikTok as a business and also promotes his craft with regards to the kind of elegant services that he gives out to mostly celebrities in Uganda by way of haircuts. Arnold therefore has a lot of following on social media, especially on TikTok, most of whom are ladies. Given that Arnold is also a very handsome and prime young man, it is not surprising that he has a lot of women clamoring around him. Now, let's pause it there and take it to the other side of the conversation, because it turns out that Arnold Barber also has a fiancée with whom he has one baby. This baby, as at the time of this incident, is just 4 months old. Now, Arnold Barber's fiancée is called Atwine Shina, and she is just 21 years old. Atwine Shina is a student, and Arnold is a barber, professional one of course, earning his keep. Now, by virtue of they having this kid, they are actually staying together. I don't know the details of how come their parents agreed they stay together, especially given how young Atwine Shina is. At the age of 21, unless she is actually married, her age is too young to have her staying with another man, and for that matter, also mothering a child. This might differ depending on which part of the world you are and what is accustomed there. So I would appreciate it if you don't agree with me on this, given where you are and the type of environment and its dynamics as they play out. But here in Africa, it's not so normal to see a 21-year-old girl or woman mothering a child and staying with the father of the child whilst she's not married. Mostly people will deem her too young, and you might rather see her staying with her parents and then mothering the child, even if the child was born out of something else. But this was not the case of Atwine Shina. She was actually staying with the baby daddy in the person of Arnold Barber. And at the age of 21, some would argue that she was still maturing with regards to how to handle certain aspects of relationships. One of them being the issue of a cheating spouse or a cheating partner. Because as it turns out, reports have it that at a point in time during their stay, Atwine Shina started raising concerns about Arnold Barber's infidelities, to the point that she began to get evidence of the fact that Arnold Barber was seeing other women. Mind you, like I explained earlier, he is a celebrity with regards to his profession and his social media exposure, and there are a lot of ladies around him also because he's very handsome. And it looks like Arnold Barber was also going with the flow, not to speak ill of him, but just so we have a detailed perspective of the background to what is actually going to play out eventually in the end of this issue. Now, these concerns were brought up, and again, given the immaturity of Atwine Shina at the age of 21, having to mother a 4-month-old baby, you can imagine the frustration. You can imagine what she's also dealing with. Feeding this kid, changing diapers, attending to this kid. It's not going to be an easy thing. And it wasn't an easy thing for her. Even women who are quite old and matured enough to be expected to effectively mother babies still struggle to an extent, or some do at least. So look at this 21-year-old who is in herself a child, having to mother another child, and now having to be saddled with the challenge of dealing with a baby daddy who seems to also be cheating on her with other women and enjoying his life. I think that these things didn't go well with Atwine Shina. Now, after a point in time, neighbors in their compound house they were staying with heard them quarreling heavily and loudly, to the point that they could hear sounds of struggles and then sounds of screams coming from the room. As is natural, they tried rushing into the room to look at what was happening and see if they can de-escalate it or intervene if it has already gone beyond something that was safe. To their surprise, the door to the room was actually locked. This was very unusual because this is a couple whom everybody knows in that part of town, especially because of the popularity of Arnold Barber. And people know they are staying together. Every couple has their issues from time to time, but mostly people know they are good and they live freely and happily with each other. So to have them arguing and sounding as though there's a struggle going on in there and the door being locked, it didn't sit well with the outsiders who were trying to see what was happening. And then they saw trickling of blood from underneath the door. This was the last straw because they realized, no, this is something that we must intervene. So they forced and broke down the door, and to their surprise, they saw Arnold Barber lying in a pool of blood, having been inflicted with several wounds, and also they saw Atwine Shina also lying in a similar position in a pool of blood. Both of them didn't seem to respond to any sign that they were alive. Unfortunately, the kid was also in the same room, but it was unharmed. So, as was instinctive, they rushed to attend to the kid and also rushed to try and seek medical help for Arnold Barber and Atwine Shina. Unfortunately, Atwine Shina was pronounced deceased at the scene, whilst Arnold Barber later started showing signs of him being alive, but unfortunately would also end up losing his life at the medical facility. So just like that, this couple had just given up the ghost. Now, fast forward, investigations commenced because it could have been anything. It wasn't clear how this couple had died, although there were signs of a scuffle. There were actually sounds of them arguing and the sounds of them engaged in a brawl or a scuffle of a sort. But then there was still the need to ascertain what actually caused their demise. So investigations started, and mind you, this was just within this past Christmas holidays. It was after Christmas in 2023. So this case is actually still being investigated. But then initial findings or preliminary findings reportedly came out that a friend of Atwine Shina actually confided in investigators that she premeditated to harm Arnold Barber because of his infidelities. Because prior to finding out a recent one, she was already complaining. And when she found out a recent one, she, according to this friend, she went out and she bought herself a new knife. Yeah, she bought herself a brand new knife and she kept it. And it so turns out that that new knife happens to be the same weapon that was used in unaliving this couple between the two of them. So as it stands now, the working theory is that Atwine Shina attacked Arnold Barber with this knife, dealt with him and unalived him, and then she turned it on herself and unalived herself. But in as much as that is the working theory out there, I'm also wondering, was she strong enough? If you look at Arnold Barber, he's quite built. He's 27 years old and he's a man. He's quite built. Now, if you look at Atwine Shina, she's the smaller of the two and she isn't so well built enough to be able to overpower the well-built Arnold Barber. So somebody might be wondering, how does she overpower him and unalive him with this knife? And that is one part of my question actually. I'm wondering how. But then again, to counter my question in itself, there's also the bit of you don't need to go head on in confronting him if you are Atwine Shina, because you will lose. So if she really is the one who did it, then it's also possible she didn't go in a head-on confrontation, but she rather snuck on him and maybe surprised him with the attack, or maybe she just sort of romanced her way into committing it, where he wouldn't have seen it coming. And by so doing, if she inflicted the first damage and it was major, he would be incapacitated and she would go on to do whatever she wanted to do. So it's not so much about the strength difference, it's also about the strategy and tactics that were used by Atwine Shina, if indeed she's the one responsible for what happened to them. Investigations are still ongoing. I'm still following the case and I'm waiting to see how it goes. But again, like I was talking about, in the first place, I think that both families should have taken a closer look at what was happening, because it wasn't a one-off thing that led to this. It seems there was a trend. In any case, these guys were not married, but they were staying together. And the mother or the side or the baby mama was just 21 years old. She herself was a kid. So who was giving them direction? Who was making sure that problems between them was being solved? Who was educating them on how to go about certain things? I don't know. But what hurts me most, aside these two lives being lost, is the fact that this kid they've left behind will grow up to know of the story of how the parents left. And that in itself is heavy. That in itself is heavy. I believe that once you get together, whether it's even to date, especially also to get married, sit down and appreciate the responsibilities you've taken upon yourself and hold yourself accountable, and also be ready to be held accountable. You can't have a kid with somebody and be staying together with the person and trying to find other pleasures outside of the person. It will also not end well. People react differently. Nobody saw this coming, that Atwine Shina was going to react like this. That is, if she did. But in the end, it has brought us to where it has brought us. I always say that be sincere to people. Don't treat people in a way you know is wrong and expect that you argue your way out of it. People react differently. Someone will take it cool. Someone will just talk and leave it. Someone would also do what has happened in this case. And in as much as it's bad, the damage has been done. Sometimes you can avoid a violent person's reactions by just being respectful and truthful to the person and just moving on with your life, instead of treating people anyhow and expecting to get away with it, because you know if they try to cross a certain line, they are going to be arrested. Sometimes some people in themselves have their own issues and they don't care about that when you are triggered. So you have to be very careful with your life and ensure that you are respecting how you treat people. It's very, very important. As it stands now, both lives have been lost. I just hope they are resting in peace wherever they are. And my condolences to the family. If you saw a video of the dad, he was so distraught. He was so hurt. And you could see the prospects on Brian Barber and his son were so high, especially Arnold Barber. He was a budding social media entrepreneur and social media influencer. But unfortunately, this has cut his life short. It's so unfortunate. But again, like I said, we all need to take a cue from this and learn to hold ourselves accountable and also be ready to be held accountable. It's not all pleasures that you have to chase, especially if you've committed to somebody. That is a lesson here. If you look at most of the true crime stories out there, crimes of passion are about 80% or 85% of the root causes. That sends a signal. And for me, I think that the signal is that if you've made a choice to be with somebody, just be with them. Don't try to cheat on people. Don't try to play people as if they are stupid or you are trying to imply you are wiser than them. Some people will just take it cool. Others might end up reacting, like Atwine Shina is alleged to have reacted. But either way, you don't need that. So please, respect people. And as I said, when there are any updates on this issue, I'll bring it to you. So then, stay safe. Enjoy 2024. I'll catch you on the next one.